I just wanted to add briefly that they are very similar, but I would also like to say that there are not in Kenya, for instance. Now we have set the new constitution of the counties. So in private sector, I've seen, the private sector has been having parliamentary info system for 4 or 5 years because they're very similar. And in one country, there is one parliament, but it could be several parliamentary-like kind of institution. And if an information system can be used as a metaphor, as a kind of pipeline, what passes through the pipes is definitely different at a municipality level than on a parliament-wide. But they have both plenary, they have committee, so they are very much functioning. In fact, Kenya is also interested for that. The same system could be used for the county that are a very relatively similar process.
Thank you. Solon, yes, please. A microphone, please.
Jim Snyder, Solon. Akuma Ntoso is being implemented first in Africa. And that's interesting because you think state-of-the-art technology, it should be the United States, the States, Europe, and here it is, Africa. And it turns out that's not an isolated phenomenon. Again and again with these new technologies, it's small, not so wealthy areas, not so sophisticated, that seem to be on the cutting edge and not the major players. It's especially ironic because you would think that the large sophisticated places like California and New York and Massachusetts, wealthy, would be the leaders. And they're always saying, oh, they can't do it because it's too expensive when you talk to the legislative staff in places like this. But then again, it's Africa that seems to be leading. So the question is, what explains this dynamic with legislative information technology? I find it non-intuitive based on the rationales that people give for not going ahead with technology, why it happens this way.
Thank you. I have three last comments. Mr. Vergottini, Timothy Arnold Moore, and Sufyan from Canada. So first, Mr. Vergottini.
All right, I'm Grant Vergottini from Accenture from California. I wanted to address that issue. I've actually been following the development of Bangani and other developments around the world. And what I find different with California is that we have the luxury of being able to afford to have it a specific way, and that tends to get in the way. Where the specific, in the case of California, they're willing to pay to do it the way they've always done it. They don't have to be nimble, they don't have to be cost effective. And so the rules that have been in place, we have to work around, we can't change them. Whereas a smaller jurisdiction is much more willing to make changes. For instance, I was quite intrigued by Claudia's presentation on an amendment system. That looked really, really cool compared to what we can do. Our limitation is page and line numbers. Those get in the way. We cannot get around that. We have 2 houses. One of the houses is not willing to give up page and line numbers. So just regardless of the cost, we have to implement page and line numbers. But that slows down the whole process. And it means we cannot be as innovative as others sometimes.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that Accenture does the system in California, and it's pretty advanced.
Thank you. Sufyan.
Yeah. We solved the line number problem. We can share with you. Then, first to come back, I'm sorry. I visited a lot of African parliament, and unfortunately, they're not advanced, and they're struggling much more than anybody else can imagine. I think that, first let me thank the Bangani project. This is amazing. It's very good. The vision is unique, and it's excellent if one day it will become a product. And as Flavio said, the problem is to make that a product supported that people can use and buy somehow, even for free. I think the focus is too much technology, and I think it's very dangerous to go with to a parliament that don't have chairs and trying to push them from level 0 to a very advanced information management culture and a different dynamic on how to process information, publish and share information. I think the vision will be much more sellable if you make it smaller and try to share it. I think if you make it smaller, most probably big parliament will be interested. I will be very interested to see the editor portion and not the whole platform. The reality is that parliament evolved differently through the last 20 years in IT, and many of them, they have a lot of other dimension and management issues and technology adoptions and existing system. Then it's not as easy as that to rip everything apart and to introduce something and replace it. But there is a place to rip some pieces apart and introduce an open. Then I'm more interested to hear what can we share from a schema perspective, what can we share about solving line numbering problem and paragraph numbering problems, converting XML to paper, because paper, like it or not, is going to still be here for a little while. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I think your last comment on sharing is exactly what we can share together. This is what I would like at the end of this day to see, more concretely in a way. So, if you keep this in mind in the following also session, that's very much appreciated. But I think in terms of sharing, after coffee, we would like to know how you solved the problem of line and numbering, because otherwise the sharing is only between a bilateral issue. But
yeah, actually we solved the problem with the European Parliament 10 years ago and using European Parliament technology.
So you see, even more interesting. So let's break for coffee, but let me just add one comment from my own perspective. It is true that parliaments, in the developing world, may be maybe struggling. But let's not forget that parliaments in any country are the richest institutions. If not the richest, is the second rich. And I've seen governing institutions in general spending a lot of money in any country to do things that maybe were not the best option or the best choice they could make. And we, as we go around and visit parliaments, not necessarily on Bungeni's issue, but also on strategic planning, as you have been doing with us as well, you realize that they spend a lot of funds on new systems that you already know are actually obsolete already. So there is a trade there, certainly. So I wouldn't, go to the extreme. Yes, it's true. There are some parliaments that clearly could not afford probably this technology, but there are a good number of parliaments in the middle that could actually invest in something that, like Bungeni. So let me thank the two panelists for their presentations, and let's go to have a coffee on that side of the house. Thank you.
We've reached that. I think we've reached that special moment in conferences that are going well, where the previous session is continued in the coffee break and around the tables, and then it comes back into the room. So we keep going in one continuous flow. We had some interesting comments. I heard a number of interesting comments about the previous sessions, and in fact, we have one unfinished item, and then one comment I'd like to observe, and then we'll begin with our speakers for this session. Gerardo asked me to, because he promised that we would make one comment about this line number business that the Canadians have solved. Sofiane, are you able to tell us about how you solved the line number business? Sure. We're just continuing from the previous. Your microphone.
Then it's a combination of XML and technology. We are using a product that was developed. Actually, it's called 3B2, the product, to create the PDF. And essentially, that product, whenever we print XML, then whenever we transform XML to PDF, in the processing of the PDF engine send us the page where that paragraph will be printed. And we add that to our XML. Then whenever we print our XML, okay, we enrich our XML with the page in which that piece of text was printed. Then suddenly we can anywhere show the text and the page where that was printed.
That product is now called APP, Arbortext APP.
Yes, and it bought 5 times, but...
You want to find it? Arbortext APP.
Yeah, Arbortext APP.
I've used it too.
I'm sorry.
I'm not recommending any product, and unfortunately there is no open source for that. And I think there is another product, just to be fair. As a matter of fact, in that tip of publishing, there are 2 products, 3B2 and another one called XSL Formatter, I think. XPP, yes, and both they offer this feature.
Very good. One of our goals has always been a kind of concrete sharing, and I think we're doing that. And if I may, I didn't warn him of this, but Claudio Fabiani made what I thought was an interesting comment also in the context of efforts to implement XML in the European Parliament several years ago. And I think it's very apropos of our closing discussion from the ending discussion from the previous session regarding efforts to implement XML in developing countries versus technically advanced countries and that sort of thing. And Claudio, if I could, I didn't warn you I was going to do this, but if I could ask you just to share that comment again that you shared at the coffee break with those of us around the table. This was about the an earlier effort several years ago by the European Parliament to implement XML.
Yes, in fact, as you say, I think it's 7-8 years ago they tried with a project called Legislotte to go through XML, but then it failed. And it failed because they wanted to do a big bang. They wanted to apply this to all the chain. While what I show is that we are limiting to a part of the business. So we are just covering the amendments production so far, and we will extend in the future. So our approach is work by bricks. You add a brick a time, and then you get more easily approval from the business. Because approval from the business is also important. It's not only technical, it's also a change of culture. People that had to move out from MS Word environment that are used to since 30 years to a different environment. So they lose something, they gain something other. And if you try to replace completely all the chain, it's going to be very, very difficult to have approval from the business.
Thank you. That reinforces some of the things that I think are very important. Sometimes XML, I may say this, in this company, XML sometimes becomes a war of religions. Ashtak talked about different philosophies of editors. Sometimes XML becomes a religious issue, and sometimes one thinks that rather than trying to build the whole cathedral in one fell swoop, one should just build the church one brick at a time. So the experience in the European Parliament would suggest that might be a more sound approach. Let me also say that we now move to our speakers for the next session. And as Gerardo pointed out, we have the title of the session, but really we are using this as an opportunity for the representatives from different countries to talk about what they're doing with XML. They may or may not talk explicitly, in this case, about storage of XML documents, but certainly during the discussion, this would be a good opportunity to bring some of those points to the fore. Slight change from your published agenda. Our speaker from Denmark will be Niels Vesterholt, who is with the Parliament there. Niels, man, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. As said, my name is Niels Vesterholt, and I come from the Danish Parliament and work in the IT development, in the Department of IT Development. When we signed up to this conference, I asked my colleagues in the parliamentary department, what shall I tell them? And you don't guess what? The editor. So I don't hope I have stressed your patience and tell you about an editor again. At least you may have a basis for some comparison. But just a short overview of the Lexdania system complex. We have a cooperation between the government and the parliament on producing legislative documents. We have a single system to produce, organize, and publish all legislation since 1998. We had in 2004 converted our Word document to XML documents with the assistance of our Italian friends. I just want to present the workflow of an act capturing and exploiting legal information. The process starts, or can start, by a legal drafter in the ministry drafting a bill and upload it into the database, which is you can see in the center. And from there, it is announced to be introduced in the Danish Parliament, and the Parliament examines the bill through 3 readings, and during the process, a committee report will be made, maybe another after the second reading, and at last the bill is adopted after the third reading. The bill as adopted is uploaded to the database, and from here the ministry prepares the act by adding title information to the bill as adopted, and publish the act on the official websites of the government, the official journal, and the same will be done during the process of the Parliament. The documents are published on the Danish Parliament's websites. This is the tools, the instrument we work with during the process. To the left, the editor and the database, and to the right, the different sites we use. We publish our documents at. In 2007, I think it was, the Ministry of Justice decided to make e-promulgation, And that meant we have to see to look after an XML editor. The previous editor was a Word editor, where you have heard of this in the former presentations. We, as them, converted into XML based on the styling in the Word documents. But we had to find a XML editor, and we looked around and couldn't find a suitable one, and at last we asked a private IT firm in Denmark to construct this editor conforming our specifications. It is a known challenge that it is difficult to have legal drafters work in XML. They are not they're not experts in XML. They are specialists in legal drafting. So we had to make an interface between the XML instance and the human operator, because they don't understand this. And when we introduced this editor, we made a small illustration of the structured document, or how the documents are structured. Here you see a Danish bill, the plain text, and we have boxes in boxes, the document and a title group, I don't quite understand this, and document content. Oh, something is missing here. But a box around the different parts of the bill. So here it was. You see, this is a paragraph, an amendment to a paragraph, and another amendment to another paragraph. So this was just to make them understand how the system was built up. And now I'll go to a live demonstration of this system. I'm opening the editor. And from this window, I can open a template. For instance, of course, this is in Danish, but just to show how it works. This contains all the document types represented in the Danish legislation and used not only by the parliament but also by the government. So some of them are common for us, and other are specific. And some here are the Folketinget, means the Danish parliament, are specific to the Danish parliament. And I can call a template for the document type committee report, and open this. And now the template has been activated. You see the text marked up in Word, and On the right side, the three tabs shows us different functions. Document 3 here shows the structure of the document as it looks now. So different functions make it possible to modify the text. For instance, we have a small feature here, a function which import data from our parliamentary document management system. So when I activate this, I can call a specific bill, for instance, 25, and I have to mark the session, and I say it's okay. And something should happen. It does. It now imports the title of the bill, subtitle, the proposer, the list of the members of the committee to which the bill has been submitted, and different other information, which is used in the committee reports in Denmark. This is the editor mode, and in this frame you will have different options presented, and in this frame down here you will get a warning if you make a mistake. So if I, for instance, want to apply some information to this document, I place the cursor here. Here. I get the option of putting in a special text. So I do that. And this part of the document is only pure text, so it doesn't matter. I can actually just accept this. And then I get a number of other options I can choose. For instance, I can choose an element called amendment. So I enter the paragraph to which the change shall be, the changes shall be made. For instance, 2. And it now inserts an element consisting of small consisting of other elements. And notice here that I get a warning that to this element called till paragraph, it says that the element is not complete. It is expected a headline and the amendment. So I have to fulfill this, and I can see I've got some options. I choose the option, In this case, I have to mark who was the proposer of this amendment. This could be myself. This is not correct. So, and then I get new elements to fulfill. But actually, now the document is valid, so I could, in principle, finish it. What I can do during the process of editing this, I can make I can transform to a PDF. This is a very useful function for the drafter to look at the PDF, because this is the valid version of the document. So I can see if something is does it look correct, and what is missing, perhaps something. I can also do an HTML. And this was just an example of how this functions, how this works, this editor. In this case, you can insert. This element defines where in the text you want to make the change, and in this element you make. It's you write what is to be changed, and so on and so on. So this is the interface our legal drafters use, not only in the Parliament but also in the government, when they produce legislative documents. When they asked me to tell about this, it is because it has been a very great success. It actually has been in production for nearly 2 years, and it is a very popular as a tool to use, and very successfully and very effective. You are guided through the document. You get warnings when you. If you make a mistake and the document doesn't validate the insert the insertions. So this has meant a great. I don't say. Of course, we have saved some money about this, but that's not the topic here. The topic is that you spend a lot of time in pressed situation, which often occurs during the legislative process, at least in Denmark. Yes? That is my contribution.
Thank you very much. Some interesting questions present themselves when one talks about an editor that's been very popular and in use for at least 2 years, but we'll hold off on those for just a minute and first hear from our next presenter, Sylvia Tosar from Uruguay. And Sylvia, where did you decide you want to speak, from here or from?
I'll see in the moment.
Okay.
But you're going to change?
Oh. A slight pause while we swap out PCs here. While we're waiting for the slides to come up, let me take advantage of my position as the chair of the session and ask Niels. You've been in operation for 2 years. Does it cover all of the? Do you have a schema and do you prepare all the parliamentary documents now in XML?
Yes, with a few exceptions. All documents, with a few exceptions, we use the XML schemas.
What are the exceptions?
The exceptions is a very special,
very specialized document.
With a recurrence of a 12 per year or something like that.
And did I understand that that the editor is also used by the ministries that draft the bills,
yes.
or they have their?
Yes.
Okay. So it's a very integrated system throughout the whole.
It's a very integrated system. It's not a. For the time being, it's 5 ministries using the editor, and the rest ministers has outsourced this task of editing the drafts, but to a printing house. Mm-hmm. But it's just a question of time. They will take over this task themselves.
Thank you. Next, Sylvia.
Okay. Hello. First of all, thank you to United Nations, to the Interparliamentary Union, to the U.S. House of Representatives, and to the organizations through the Global Center of ICT Parliament, represented by Gerardo Cassini, always excellent organization. My name is slide. Can you go to slide? My name is Sylvia Tosar. I represent the Uruguayan Parliament. And I'm going to tell you what our talk is going to be about. First of all, I'm going to talk about the environmental practices in Uruguay. Hello. Afterwards, I'm going to talk about ICT in the Uruguayan Parliament. Then we'll talk about our program objectives, our program projects, and lastly, about our challenges. Uruguay is the second smallest country in South America, just about Oklahoma in population and in area. It's a bicameral parliament, 130 members in all. We have several administrative areas, not always in agreement, and as usual, political and budgeting considerations are always at the top. Uruguayan Parliament administration knew we had to unify, as we are a little country, and we had to unify strategy. That's why the administration created an ICT Parliament Committee that's conformed by 4 people, 3 public trust positions, the Secretary of the Senate, the Secretary of Deputies, the Secretary of an Administrative Committee, that's people who work in the Administrative Committee are people who work for both chambers. They are, as I told you, 3 public trust positions, and me as a technician. So according to that, we decided to apply all best practices we could for in strategy. So the best practices were resuming 2. 1, for IT governance. As we all know, IT governance, you can resume in strategic alignment, resource management, risk management, value delivery, and performance management. And we speak about value delivery. There was a question the other day about cutting costs. Cutting costs, well, value delivery consists of giving value, not always reducing costs, sometimes adding functionality, no? So, but the most important is strategic alignment. So the ICT Parliament is the CTIP, it's the name in Spanish for the ICT Parliament in Uruguay. It works with IT governance. It applies the standards of ISACA and ITGI, which in the United States you must know them, I suppose. And we work with portfolio, program, and project management from the standards of the Project Management Institute. And we're trying to apply all those for doing all these projects. So in that context, the CTIP has defined a portfolio within which stands the program Parliament Process Modeling. It's a current system, which I'm going to talk about now, and what are the problems we have in the current system, and why we had to make a program, so to change it, to transform it. The current system is complete, but it's obsolete. You know, innovation, we have technical innovation, years pass, and we must change, and we must adapt everything because technology changes very quickly. We have an impedance mismatch, and for me, that's the most important thing why we are changing, because we can't reflect anymore. Technology now brings other opportunities, not to reflect any more documents and bills and any other parliamentary documents in a relational database. We have an impedance mismatch. We are not representing naturally the objects. The object, it's not object-oriented, right? We must do something for it. So there's difficulties for change in the system we have now. So there's needs for evolution, and there's always a need for more transparency in every government, in every parliament. So resuming, we are talking about the 2 points yesterday we have talked about. We are talking about transparency issue, but we are talking about efficiency issue as well. So that's why we made this change. As Mark Boss, Deputy Clerk of House of Commons of Canada, said, they started because of an efficiency issue, and Gerardo Cassini outlined yesterday morning. Well, our program objectives. Our program objectives were 4. First of all, to re-engineer the parliamentary process, focusing on the most important thing. There are documents in the floor, documents in the committee, documents coming in as input, documents going out as output. Plan for changes and evolution through automated processes. If there are automated processes, why should we have a system doing it? So avoid impedance problems, that's most important, and that's the origin of everything, of all this program, by using a more appropriate representation for documents, and benefit from semantic analysis. So resuming those 4, the solution we found was a BPMS, a business process management system, with XML. What are our program projects about? Well, we found 4 program projects. We divided our program in 4 projects. The first one is the build process in BPMN and business process management notation. We do the modeling. The second one is the XML schema and editor, basically the XML schema. The other one is the build lifecycle implementation of that notation we had at the beginning. And the other one, we put it as a project for the first time. It's continuous improvement. It's not a project, it's a process. But the first time we're doing the program, it will be a project because we are going to face lots of things. So we'll see the things we're going to face the first time. And hopefully we'll develop afterwards a process after that. The build process in BPMN. Well, the objective is to build a model of the build process. For that, as Uruguay, as I told you, is a small country with a little bill, a small bill for the parliament, a small bill for ICT. Well, we based all our portfolio, the CTIP based all our portfolio on strategic alliances, right? So we are trying not to rediscover the wheel, right? So we made an alliance with the Universidad de la República from Uruguay for working with the build process in BPMN. We created a multidisciplinary group composed of people technicians from IT technicians, people from Senate, administrative people from Senate, administrative people from Chamber of Deputies, and people from the Universidad de la República also, and lawyers also. We create that multidisciplinary group. We selected a BPMS tool for modeling, and we developed the build model live. That phase is finished. That project is finished. We just have the build model modeled. For the second project, the XML schema and editor, the objective is to develop a customized schema and editor based upon open standards. So for that, as I told you, we are trying, all the portfolio is based on strategic alliances. So we're doing that with the Università di Bologna. So we signed already the agreement with the Università di Bologna, the professors Palmirani and Vitali. First, we knew all the work they've done, and then they visited Uruguay, and they made the analysis and everything, and we're beginning, just after finishing this meeting, the 1st of March, the agreement is beginning its work, and the agreement consists of the customization of the Accomantoso schema, the adaptation of the Bungeni editor, the implementation of pilot tests, and training developers and end users, developers in schema and editor, and end users for editor and so on. This is in process. We've signed the agreement. We have all the schedule. We have all the project defined, but we must begin to execute, and it's beginning 2 days from now. The third project is the build lifecycle implementation, which has started because we have already the model in BPMN in a standard. This is all based in standards, in open standards. And the objective is to implement the build process with no new functionality for the first time, because if not, it's too risky. So interpreting with the current system, because this is one of the virtues of a BPMS, that it can interpret with the current system, with the system you have. Okay, so the first phase, we are working in it now. We are selecting and acquiring a BPMS. Another one, the first one was a free one we did for the modeling. Now we're acquiring another one, acquiring the first one. Really, the other one was an open source we selected. And then we have to monitor the project execution, right? And phase 2 objectives, this is a phase 1, and the phase 2 objectives is to use the new XML schema and editor, because at the same time, Bologna is going to work in the other project. We are going to see later. We saw today, so we are going to have to use the new XML schema and editor and monitor the project execution of that other work. So after all this, we've got another project. As I told you before, that's a project by now for the first time, afterwards not, hopefully. And what is it about? About continuous improvement. And what are the points, the most important points? We have to enhance and optimize the workflows, because at the beginning we are doing just what we are doing now, the same. Afterwards, we are introducing the first recommendations of Bologna, and afterwards we have to begin to optimize the workflow. Extract more knowledge from documents, semantic analysis, Università di Bologna. Enlarge the process scope, all parliamentary documents and law, because we are beginning with the bill, although it's the most risky, it's the one that has most impact, so we decided to begin with that because our portfolio was quite balanced, so we could put this risky because we had other projects that were not so risky. So, and we have to add new participants to work group. This is here in the sense of knowledge management, because this work group has to be very open-minded. There's lots of innovation, so we must be very careful to introduce other people to working in this work group. What are the challenges from Uruguay? Well, we don't have defined a knowledge management system. We don't have it. We just have the knowledge management done in each one of the projects, but we don't have the counterpart, not the people who are doing the projects. In Uruguay, we don't have a project for knowledge management. That's a challenge. We don't have an organizational change management done, a project. That's another one. Then the other one is to create a centralized unit for document processing. Why centralize at the beginning? Because, as always, you do it as evolution. At the beginning, you centralize it. we decided we are going to work with XML at the beginning, at the exit of the committee, at the exit of the Senate, at the exit of the other committee in the deputies, at the exit of the floor deputies. And so in all those places, it's going to be the same office working, right? But afterwards, at the beginning, it's all centralized, as I said, because of knowledge management. But afterwards, this is going to be decentralized, so the users, the stakeholders itself do the work, right? But this is going to be slow because we must do the project on knowledge management and on organizational change management, because if not, this is going to be no success, okay? We must apply generalized program governance, because if we don't apply governance, if we don't have the administration, the board ahead of this, we are having it now, but if we don't continue having the board in this is not going to be a success. It's fundamental, the board being on top of all this ambitious program. And because of outsourcing, we have risk. We have included global program integration management, because we have outsourcing with Bologna, with external people other places, so that's risky. But we know that we are working with people very talented, but it's difficult because we are a distance apart. Well, afterwards I show you the references, the CGIT from ISACA to apply to governance, the PMBOK for good practices from Project Management Institute, internal documents from Monica Balbirani and Fabio Vitali, but there are lots of documents internet from them that they are not internal. This is our particular case for Uruguay, but there are lots of, you can study lots of them in internet. Internal documents from Daniel Calegari and Professor Pablo Miranda from the Universidad de la República, and open standards and open source from Dr. Robert Suter, who works in IBM. Well, thank you very much to all of you. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. Two countries at two different places in their implementation of open standards, XML, editors, et cetera. Denmark, who's been doing this for several years. Uruguay, who's just beginning with a very ambitious and obviously well thought through plan. Questions from those of you in the group? Comments? Things you'd like to know more about? Tim?
I have a question for Niels. Can you talk a little bit more about the technology that you're using underneath? I noticed Microsoft Word was the basis of the editing tool, and I didn't hear you describe what you were using to create PDF. Can you talk about that a little?
It is a add-in to Word, the editor, .NET based add-in. And we use Antenna House to create this PDF.
Other questions or comments? Niels, I did want to ask you, since you've had some experience with this, how long does it take your editors to learn to use your editor?
Well, a couple of hours, I guess.
A couple of hours. All right.
Of course, you have to understand the technique, the drafting technique, the way to draft legal documents. But it's really fast for the users to understand the structure of the document. Of course, they know it already in a way, but and you see it in another way in the editor. And this was very fast for them to learn.
Other questions or comments? One last one I have for Sylvia. Sylvia, you've decided to adopt a Comatoso. Have you experienced any problems yet, given the fact that it wasn't designed explicitly with your parliament in mind, or is it meeting the flexibility characteristics you hoped it would have?
Yes, we studied lots before deciding. We studied lots in internet before making such a session. And then we visited, we've been in Bologna, and we visited, and we had lots of analysis. And we've seen that they are perfectly capable of doing a customization for that, because it's really open, standard.
So it's adapting well for your parliament?
Yeah. They should all work. They should work.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We'll end this panel at this time. Thank you again, panelists, for your comments. And we will have, as they say in the ballet or the symphony, a slight pause while we bring the next speakers to the table. But don't go away. So could I call the next panel forward? Mauro, are you? And oh, there you are. Thank you.
You want to go first, or you want to go first?
So we continue as we've said all along, we're going to be hearing what these parliaments are doing in the area. The title for this the category of information discussion theme is multi-channel dissemination of parliamentary documentation. We'll begin first with Kirsten Gullickson. She is here with the U.S. House of Representatives and has more years of experience with XML than I'm sure she cares to share with you. So we'll leave it at that and get on with her presentation.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everyone. It's good to be here. I first was introduced to this community in 2008 at the eWorld Parliament Conference in Brussels, and it's very exciting to sit today and listen to all the progress that we have all made to make our data more accessible to the public. And also for our own internal uses, it seems that we are making things easier. As you know, as many of you know, the United States House is engaged in an ongoing effort to author and publish its official documents and data in XML. The goals of this effort are to make improvements in our cost, accuracy, timeliness, and efficiency of our document creation and revision process. As well as we wanted to establish common data standards for our exchange of legislative information across our legislative branch organizations. We've talked a lot already this morning about the challenges that each of our institutions have, and I'll just quickly review them. We all know that we need to prepare, manage, distribute, and archive our data. This includes our paper and electronic means for handling official documents. Here in the House and in the Senate, our paper document is the official document of record. So we have two streams. We have our paper workflow and we have our electronic workflow, and we need to manage both of them. In this Congress, there was some recognition in our official House rules that the electronic copy did matter. And I'll show you a website that we created to post the text of legislation as it will become, as it is being considered by the House floor. This particular leadership has a strong commitment to posting legislation 3 days before it is considered on the House floor. The speaker last night at the reception mentioned that, and I'll show you the website that lets the public and our members and staff know which legislation that is. We also know that our government data must be accurate, accessible, authenticated, complete, detailed, and searchable. And so that poses a real big challenge to all of us. We also know that our IT systems need to be quick, flexible, meet the changing needs of the public and members of Parliament, and involve very little risk. We can't afford any interruptions in our operations because we never know when our membership might want to come back and meet. Basically, the House leadership could call the session back or the Congress back to Washington and have them meet at any time, so our systems need to meet that. We have very little opportunity here in the House to actually make upgrades and improvements when we're talking about actual real-time deployment. What day do you do it? What time do you do it? How do you do it so that we do not have any interruptions? We all know, and the purpose of our day is to talk about XML and structured data, and Jeff mentioned that it can be a religious experience when we're talking about XML, and I certainly have swallowed the Kool-Aid, as it were, and am definitely on the XML bandwagon. I find that it does meet the needs of our accountability and our transparency. It also provides that degree of accessibility and empowerment of the public. We have a few places where we can concretely see that our external stakeholders, our non-government organizations here in the United States, have taken our published XML and they're adding value to it and empowering the public regarding our legislative process. In one of our agendas, there was a question of what do you need to make XML and document publication happen, so I wanted to take some time and answer that question. You certainly need your own in-house or out of your organization's subject matter experts. You need to know what kind of documents and what kind of data you're talking about when you want to put it in XML. Your subject matter experts are going to be able to help you determine that structure that you need to add to your documents. I'm a strong believer that we need self-identifying XML element names, and that we definitely need to think about what our XML names are. Right now, our XML is not necessarily official, but we use our XML to create that official document of record. And so when we're releasing that XML out into the public, we need to make sure that it's easily consumable and easily used. We have one court case in our United States Supreme Court that a group of attorneys, they call it an amicus brief, which is a friend of the court brief, and it's basically documentation that outside organizations can give to the Supreme Court to say, hey, here's our findings about this case, here's what we think. And in that friend of the court brief, they actually referred to the XML in the legislation when determining legislative intent. And so we learned really early on, even though that we're not thinking about our XML as being official, there are certainly people consuming our XML that are paying attention to it and using it to determine what was legislative intent. And of course, obviously, we need IT specialists trained in XML technologies. I put time on my slide because here in the House, it has taken us some time to move forward in XML just because some of our documents are very complex. Our legislative structure is complicated. We have over 12 different legislative styles over the 200 years of legislation. And as we learned earlier in one of the questions, we're a little like the state of California. We can afford to take our time sometimes. And we also had to we always are making the determination as to when do we need an XML editing environment. So when are our authors actually working in the XML editing environment, and when can our systems just produce that XML for us? So we certainly have XML that's posted out for the public, that our databases and our systems, we just write the program to export that in XML, and we have an XML editor that our lawyers who draft on behalf of our members, they actually are editing in XML. Some of our lessons learned from that XML editor is that you can create an XML editor that meets the needs of the author. so that we can take advantage of all those valuable things that we get from XML, consistent formatting, better search, and the ability to publish in multiple formats. Our editors didn't like the structured format right away. We do keep them in a legislative structure inside the XML editor. But once they learned how to use the application, I don't think they'll ever go back to Word or free-forming editing. We also made sure that we provided them smart authoring tools so that they had an incentive to use the editor. We have the ability to draft in tags off environment so they don't have to know the XML. Again, in our Bill DTD, in our legislative Bill DTD, our elements are named with easy to understand tag names. So our section is a section, our subparagraph is a subparagraph. So we learned that those really helped in that particular editing environment. When we get to the discussion portion, and we started talking about some of our limitations that we have to try to meet these goals, I'd love to hear what kind of limitations folks are thinking about with their XML. So far, we haven't had a lot of limitations, except when we're taking some of our older documents and applying the style sheets to them, and the style sheets and the technology for those style sheets and the XSLT engine just doesn't really accommodate what we want to show on that PDF. We're using, I guess the best example I can give us is tables. Our government printing office extended the CALS table model years ago, and it has taken quite some time for the XML technologies to catch up to be able to actually display CALS tables in the manner in which our documentation needs those tables to be displayed. We don't move very fast, so if a table was displayed in 1940, we want to display the table and show it the same way in 2012. We do use the XML to produce the PDF, so I'm going to show you a couple things that are out there in the public. Very quickly, we have 4 websites that are the primary source of where you can find out about our legislation. Docs.house.gov is the text of legislation that may be considered before the House of Representatives. We have clerk.house.gov, which shows our floor proceedings and our roll call votes. And then thomas.loc.gov shows bill status and summary, text of legislation, links to other government documents on gpo.gov. And then our government printing office, gpo.gov, again has text of legislation, our congressional record, which is our record of our debates, public laws, the U.S. Code, and our committee documents. So I want to really quickly show you docs.house.gov. If I can get. So docs.house.gov was in our workflow and what was publicly available for the public and for our members. It was very, very hard to get the current version of a piece of legislation, and what was that piece of legislation that was going to come before the House of Representatives. And so last year, the House Rules decided that we would create a website that would allow the majority leader in the Committee on Rules to post bills that would be considered on the House floor. And it's just simply docs.house.gov. And on this website, we have an application that allows the content users to update and load all of this data onto the website. The actual page itself is available in XML, so folks can download the XML of this actual page along with the links to the documents. The users can post the PDF and the XML version of a document, and so we'll just take a look at HR 2117. As it's whirling, I will go over here and click on the XML as well, and we'll see if I can't get up. I'm supposed to. Let me see why I'm not connected. One moment, we'll see why we should be connected to the internet here, but I'm not.
Go open it and yeah, disconnect it.
Disconnect it again. Okay.
Okay, then go back up and down.
Well, I'm going to disconnect it and back. Oh. I need to go back in and type our password in. Let me just shut that off. Why is it not? Why is the page not coming back up? Okay. I'm going to keep talking while you figure that out. Hold on. I'm going to have Mike try to figure out what's going on. I'll keep talking. The PDF that is published on docs.house.gov and the XML that is on that site is used to create the PDF. And what I wanted to show you was on the XML, we have all our the sponsor of that bill is tagged up as a sponsor name, and we have a unique ID associated with that member. And what we discovered when we first started posting data in XML that had to do with our memberships, and we were using these unique IDs, that we didn't ever publish out in the community the list of all the unique IDs across for all of our members. But because there were external stakeholders using our data, they started using that unique ID in their data set too. And it's kind of become a standard now. If you're consuming legislative data, then you should use the ID that we've assigned to the members, we can go into other. We'll see if I can. There, here's our bill in XML, and here's our sponsor names, and I will show you the source of that. We first started publishing XML documents on the web in 2001, and so at that time we determined to put our metadata in, use the Dublin Core metadata. We're always open to other metadata standards, but you can see, as an example, here's our name IDs for our members that can be used. And when we go over you can see how savvy I am using the mouse on the laptop. We publish all the votes that happened on the House floor. Some of our members got to tour the chamber this morning. We have an electronic voting system over there. And we publish all those votes that come out of that system in XML on the web. That XML also goes over to the government printing office, and those votes become part of the congressional record. We're using the same source to do both activities. And you can just see here's that same name ID. Obviously a different tag name, some different information about the member, but those are some little minor things that we learned when we were putting our XML together, that you need to pay attention about what you're doing across your data sets. And we use a common tag library so that we are being consistent in our common data sets. See, it's lunchtime. I'm ready for lunch. I also have had an opportunity to describe how a bill becomes a law, and I brought that chart with, and I like paper, and so I'll put copies over on the table. But this simple chart just shows a very simple process of how our bill becomes a law and how we process it by different organizations across the legislative branch, and then how that data gets published in XML. I also have a laptop that has our XML editor loaded on it, so if anyone wants to see the specifics of the editor, we can certainly take time, lunch break or the next break, and I can show you that. We have a website called xml.house.gov that describes our DTD. We're still in DTDs because we created our DTDs in 1998 and 99. They are schema compliant, but we use DTDs. And it also has our common tag library there. So our presentation to both e-Parliament conferences are on there, so that also gives some more information about what we're doing in XML.
Thank you very much, Kirsten.
You're welcome.
We go next to Italy, where it's warmer. Maybe not today, I don't know. It's been cold in Europe this year. We're pleased to have Mauro Fioroni, who's the head of the IT department at the Senate of Italy, and a colleague of ours for a number of years, here to talk about what they're doing in the Senate.
Hard task, Jeff. The last presentation before lunch. It's not fair.
It's another half hour before it's lunchtime in Italy.
Where is it, my presentation? You know where it is?
Yeah, do you know the name of it?
Yes, but it's not here. No.
Is it
Here.
That one.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay. Just a quick overview of what we are doing in the Italian Senate. An outline, very brief outline, with the consideration we are using XML for different goals. Three, I think we are the main objects are three. I would say there is a fourth one that is cost. I was saying yesterday, cost savings, and that's the in this moment in Italy, in Europe, in the European Parliament, cost saving is a very important goal. And that's our challenge as ICT responsible to demonstrate to our decision makers that adopting innovation and using XML, you can save money. You can save money to the overall cost of the institution. The first line of adopting XML we have seen is for producing, drafting, and publishing documents. We are all doing the same things, and I think we have to thank the organization because I think it's very important to share experience and to face different approach to face the same problems, and hopefully to share standards. That's the last goal. Anyway, the final goal, I want to use an expression that Mark Bosch used yesterday. The final goal is to reach an electronic, not paper-based parliamentary working environment. How we can do it? First of all, of course, to produce a document, XML document in drafting and publishing. in all different kind of parliamentary documents, certainly reports, bills, amendments, to catch these documents and this information as close as they are produced, hopefully directly from, in the case of amendments, for instance, from the political groups. That's very important, what we have seen in the European Parliament. We are not at that level, but we are very close to it. We are thinking to give a tool, a very similar tool that Claudio Fabiani showed us before, to the political group to upload directly their amendments. That's not easy at all. Other kind of documents, certainly reports. In this case, the reports we produce directly, parliamentary reports during the parliamentary session in progress, and we have projected a tool based on Microsoft Office with on Word that is very similar to the other editor, XML, Word editor with the custom tags that we have seen before. We choose not to use an XML editor, but a word processor, because for the learning curve that is for us, our stenographer is much shorter, of course, with the usual editor. This is one sector, the verbatim reports directly produced by our stenographers in XML and published on the website. For bills, we are thinking about to the adoption of other XML format and XML standard. I will talk about it later. Let's talk about how to use XML to distribute information, to distribute XML parliamentary documents. We have designed this tool that is a dynamic engine that produce parliamentary dossier from directly from a web page at disposal of users on our website. We have a tool that we have projected especially for tablet PC, and we decided to adopt the EPUB format that is produced from an XML standard of our documents. The user, senators, can choose on a web page, this one, can choose any sort of parliamentary document and decide to collect a dossier. And this dossier is, there is an engine that we developed that dynamically compose this parliamentary dossier. So at the end, you have on your library, on your ebook, you have your dossier, and you can browse it on with a paper-like experience. Of course, this is very appreciated by our our senators that are very fond of paper. And we have noticed that in this way we have managed to reduce the consumption of paper dossier. So we hope that we can, in the near future, we don't distribute anymore in the committees dossier for senators. We will see, but still, at the moment that the production of a paper document is dramatically reduced. I would say the half. We have halved the production of a paper-based document. But the main important thing that is that the dossier is personalized by the user, so you can collect a bill, an amendment, a dossier, or the press review that our parliament distribute once distributed only by paper on paper. The Scriba is the name of this project. Is an open source program, so we distribute it on the GPL3, GNU GPL3 license. Is on SourceForge, and anyone can download it and can personalize and enrich this project. Another way to use XML to distribute information is our mobile website. It's important to highlight that this website is not a copy or another website. It's just another. It's produced dynamically from the institutional and main website, sort of transformation based on XSL standard. So it's adapted, the information that we deliver in this way is adapted, of course, on mobile displays. It's that the information is streamed. How can I say? It's the essential information, especially devoted on about current affairs. That is more relevant for mobile users. The third sector of usage of XML is for interoperability. So we have many projects to exchange information with other institutions, for instance, or with external systems. We have a typography, for instance, that exchange electronic bills or amendments when we can't, our internal workers can't manage to input this information in our database. In some cases, we have to ask to an external provider that in this way, the way in which we ask for XML format to receive this information. On the other way, when we communicate outside our information for other projects, for instance, with the European Union, there is an important project that is called so-called IPEX. My colleague in this afternoon will talk about it. We exchange information about the Senate scrutiny information, the level, and to the IPEX database in XML format. Or another thing, we exchange information, XML documents with the other house, with the Camera dei Deputati. We exchange government inspector acts in XML format. Last important project that I want to mention is our portal, public portal of enforced Italian laws. It's called Normativa. It's contains all the version of every approved law since 1948. Recently we have the users can download an XML version of every law. It's important to have this format for other usage of the laws. Quick conclusion. So XML is a powerful tool for content management, document formatting verification, interoperability. And we need standards for this IT team to the lack of standardization forces IT team to reinvent the wheel. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel in each every project parliament. We need the customer XSD schema, and we working with the UN and CISFID. We are evaluating as Senate accomantoso schemas for publishing bills and reports. We are seriously thinking to adopt this standard. We support the work started in OSCs. Last conclusion, I want to mention what you said yesterday. In Europe, the crisis is a good opportunity to innovate. We are the challenge, as I said at the beginning, now is to demonstrate to our political decision makers that we don't have any other chance than to innovate. So they have to show them and to demonstrate that this the reduction of papers, but not only the user we can afford to have a less paper-based process using this technology. I hope I'm positive on it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mauro. Very interesting presentation. Two very interesting presentations. Lots of food for thought, possible questions, comments, and questions from the group. Yes.
This isn't exactly a question. It's just an endorsement, really. Mauro, while you were telling us about the Make Your Own ebook, I did it on here. It's absolutely brilliant, and we should all do it. Thank you. Just to pick up on a thing that Daniel asked earlier this morning about whether we'd done costings for this and replacing paper and so on. What I didn't say then was I've been banging on at my administration for actually since before iPads came out, saying just the printing cost within the House of Lords of the official report, which is it's just south of £1 million a year. For that money, in 1 year, you could buy a tablet device, and I have an iPad here, but I'm an Android tablet user at home, so I'm platform neutral here. You could buy a tablet device for every member, and we've got 800 of them, and most of the administration, and still have savings simply from 1 year's printing budget on one of our documents, admittedly the biggest one, but one of them. So it pays for itself. And something like this that you've developed now, yeah, you can say it pays for itself, but you've got to have the software to do it. This does it. It's genius.
Thank you. I appreciate.
Yes.
So one of the many things that struck me about both of your presentations, but particularly Mauro's, you'd mentioned that it's the normative. Is that
normativa? Yes,
normativa.
It's a portal of Italian legislative database.
It looks like you mentioned that has every approved law in the database going back to 1948, and it's in XML.
Yes.
What was the process like to go back and sort of pull in that older data? Like,
the XML is produced dynamically from a previous databases that are marked with the specific. So it's not originally in XML.
Of course,
it's a dynamic production to make users to give the users the possibility to have an XML format of the law to any usages that the users or even a private entrepreneur can decide to do with this law. That's all. I don't know if
we'll talk about it during lunch too.
Yes, Monica.
Okay, in parallel to Norma Attiva, started another project in a High Court of Cassation in Italy that used Norma in Rete standard that Fabio and me was involved since the beginning to develop the standard. And this database is fully and deeply marked up in XML in Norma in Rete. And now the database is about 100,000 of documents deeply marked up. And the cost of these is 10 people, half time, and all the Gazette of Italy is marked up by this stuff.
What is important to highlight that the standard, the XML standard of the law is you have to renovate to all the time. So it's important to have an authority that and a group that follow the standard, because to have a standard is the basic rule, the way to keep this system alive.
Other comments or questions? We have two interesting themes going on. One is some of the issues in going back to get some of the older material, which is an interesting challenge in and of itself. And how one does it and what's the return on that. I wanted to go back for just a moment, though, to the question to the endorsement that Simon just made, and ask about any other experiences any of you all have had in terms of adopting legislative documents to tablet devices or other devices. The nominal title of our session is multi-channel distribution. There are a number of folks, obviously, who have begun to experiment with publishing to devices other than what we have traditionally published to. Italy, the Senate in Italy clearly has done a very creative thing here. Other experiences of folks? I know Joan had mentioned what they were doing in the UK in terms of making those documents available, but she was quite clear that it was not just XML documents. It could be documents in any format. I was just wondering if any other experiences from those of you in the group about publishing or distributing via new devices, tablets. Yes, Tim.
We just recently added a capability for the Singapore government to access from specifically mobile phones, actually, for their website. And the main problem there is, of course, screen real estate. And you've got these large documents that you want to have the maximum area to read the document. It really is just a matter of managing your style sheets. If you've got XML data underneath, you just provide different style sheets, slightly different navigation capabilities so that you have more of the screen for content.
I was interested in that, in your comment, because it's been a tenet of faith for some time that if you had XML underlying it all, it was, if you will, just a matter of managing the style sheets, and then you could publish to a variety of devices and formats. We've sometimes espoused that as a solution addressing some of the issues related to making things accessible to people with disabilities. And I don't know if anybody has any specific experience with that particular topic. It would be interesting to know. And of course, on the other side, XML can't do anything about the size of the screen. So there, I think it becomes more a matter of what is usefully portrayed on a smartphone, what is usefully portrayed on a tablet, et cetera. Yes, Tom.
I think based on a little experience that we're having at the moment with putting the U.S. code onto tablet devices, that I might be a little less optimistic than Tim just about the problem of managing the proliferation of these devices, right? I mean, unless you're going to adopt an internal standard for what the devices should be, such as, for example, the iPad, I think you really face a huge problem with different devices with different capabilities. That's a lot of style sheets, is one way to put it.
Kirsten?
I have one sample of where yesterday in the discussion, I think someone brought up the five stages of how you get data out. And before members really had smartphones, and we don't allow very many electronic devices on the House floor, we needed a way for them. They could carry their BlackBerries, and at that time they just had email capabilities. And so we did need a way to communicate what was going on the House floor in real time to them through that device. So the first thing we did was just set up a listserv, and so the members could email a particular email address, and then they would get back our current on the House floor proceedings, and it just told them what happened the last few minutes. We still have that email listserv up and running, but now obviously our members have smartphones, and they can just go right to our website and see that data, and that data is in XML. But none of my management is here, so I will give out the email address just in case you want to experiment, because we are in session today. The email is now@mail.house.gov, and it's going to bring back the floor proceedings that we do publish on the clerk.house.gov website. So it's now@mail.house.gov.
And certainly, I think that's a good example of information which is small enough, concise enough that the smallest devices, yes, it's useful to publish those in smallest devices as you. So maybe there are three. There's the phone, there's the tablet, which is closer to a piece of paper in size, and then PCs of various sizes. Yes, Daniel.
Just sort of two things. One, picking up off of the conversation that we were having yesterday. This is an area where a lot of parliament, PMO, whatever, I can't think of the alternative term here, the non-governmental entities also will spend a lot of time and a lot of effort gathering and republishing this kind of information. We, for example, grab the clerk's floor feed. We have a mobile app where anyone can go and see what's going on the floor right now using their Android phone or their iPhone to sort of see what's going on. And sort of in a similar vein, there are a number of legislative documents that are not made publicly available, such as CRS reports, that become leaked out. And you can actually go and buy many of them online at Amazon.com, which will download to many of your different mobile devices at no cost, as well as through some of the non-governmental places that make them available as well. So certainly there's not just folks inside the government, but there are other folks that are looking at different ways of making this information available to give you either a paper-like interface or something that's more interactive.
And I think that you underscore the point that has been made by a number of folks and in the session yesterday, that by releasing information in XML, you unleash some potential innovation and creativity that those of us who work in the parliaments would love to do but don't have the time to do, because life intrudes on the things that we'd like to do. So.
And in some cases, it's not really our role to add that value to that data. For instance, it's always been my belief that our vote data is very important, but it's not my job necessarily to make sure to analyze that data to figure out, is my member a good member or a bad member because of the number of votes he or she missed, or did they vote a certain way? My job as a Parliament staffer is to make sure that data is accurate and it's published in a structured format. Of course, I know that here in the United States, the external stakeholders or the non-government entities want that data in different formats so they can search it better and do that value added.
Sophia, I'll come back to you, Dan.
And sometimes it's even our role to do things, but because we have a lot of policies, and it's good that you have touched on the accessibility, and in Canada we have the Language Act also, yes. Then sometimes innovation inside the Parliament costs much more than innovation outside. And sometimes that innovation outside give good idea to politicians to ask us to do it the right way. Then the beauty of innovation outside that they can cut corners, we cannot, okay? Our website at the same time is always watched by various type of activists, including people with disability and including people who are protecting the French language to ensure that we always publishing in both languages. Those the dilemmas. To get back to the experience of mobile computing, we are the subject of, like everybody else, we've been asked to cut 10% of our budget. And we are fortunate that we have members who ask us to give them options. And one of the options they accepted that we stop printing many of the publications that I will not name because the same type of publications. Early in the process, then we decided to develop some kind of a strategy because there are some challenges. And there are some low-hanging fruits, and those low-hanging fruits are being already implemented by our clerks and by external people. There are people already taking our PDF, putting it in a Dropbox, making that Dropbox public, and using a Dropbox iPad app to search them and to use them, and they are using them everywhere. But when it comes to deliver services, we clearly identify two types of services to members in their various roles in the House, in committees, and to the public. And when you get to the dimension of the public, it's going to become soon, unfortunately, secondary. Because the main goal, if we're going to cut paper, we're going to need to give alternative to the members to do what they are paid to do. And that's what the focus will be. And then at that stage, we're going to pick one platform, most probably. We will not be building for all platforms. We will try to make it, put a vision that whatever we do is reusable in different platforms, but our first goal is going to be one platform. Most probably it's going to be the iPads, because also we have introduced a bring your own device strategy, and then we will not pay for the device anymore. And again, because we serve the members, then the members have opted for iPads.
Well, there's a whole slew of issues there. But I promised Daniel that I'd come back to him. We'll hold off on that for just a second, Sylvia. Go ahead, Daniel.
And I will resist addressing this particular set of points as well. At least when we think about the role of the clerk or the role of the Library of Congress or GPO, we sort of make a distinction. I think everyone here agrees that well, almost everyone would agree that the underlying raw information should be available. And I think most of us would probably agree that I'm not going to go and ask the clerk's office, for example, to go engage in analysis, because that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's not really the proper role. Now, if the analysis is already being done, then, of course, we would say that it should be made available. So CRS reports, for example, from our perspective, make sense. But I think there's also a middle point, which is context, which is different from analysis. It's not going out and performing an additional work. It's more, how does this particular set of information, how can it be related to other sets? So looking at vote data, who voted? Can you go and pull down all the votes of what everything that this person voted on? It's not to say that their votes are right or that their votes are wrong, but just to be able to go and sort of see how these pieces connect. And I think that there's a lot of room, when parliaments publish information, they need to think about providing sufficient context so that people understand what the data is and what it means, without necessarily pushing them to go and do additional analysis, which if they're not already doing it, then you know, generally speaking, I wouldn't ask, and I don't think Sunlight would ask them that they go and engage in that kind of work. So I would make those kinds of distinctions. So,
my favorite example of a lack of context is when the other chamber here, the U.S. Congress, will publish its vote results, and the vote was 55 to 37 yay on the question. And that's what the vote was. It was calling the question. Well, there's no context there whatsoever, and I don't know how anybody understands what that vote was about. But those inside the institution know what the vote was about, and they know not just what the vote was about, but whether it was, in their opinion, a good vote or a bad vote. But if we could just describe the vote, that would be a step forward. Yes?
I wanted to get back to the mobile platform question. And I think this is a question both for the Italian Senate, Canada perhaps, Monica and Flavio, and the UK. Is EPUB the standard for standard format, and does it work both on iPad and Android devices? And maybe someone will know who actually monitors that standard. So if there's any way that this group could participate in that standard activity to make sure it will work for long periods of time.
Who would like to respond to that?
I have an easy response. We decided to go with PDF.
Mike?
We decided to go with PDF, and we consider as more open standard than EPUB. But we adopted PDF because the flexibility it brought us, not because of standard or not, to be honest. There are a lot of tools around it that will allow us to do things.
We evaluated that EPUB is a good standard, it's a good open standard, and of course it depends how good is the EPUB reader. For instance, the EPUB reader on the iPad is a very good EPUB reader, so you have a good paper-like feeling, but there are a lot of EPUB reader even on PC that are maybe are not so good, but maybe in the near future they could evolve. We think that for tablet PC EPUB is a good standard. And our senators appreciate it, so that's very important for us.
Just to add, yes, I think EPUB is very good standard. Our problem was the page numbers. With EPUB, we were not able to preserve the page numbers as the same printed, and whenever you turn it, it changed the formatting, and it's very important for a member of parliament in French and in English when they speak about page 13, paragraph 3, it's the same. Then for us, it's a way, it's not an option. Otherwise, EPUB would be, we adopted EPUB for our books, publications, that are only a reference.
You are right, but for our aim that to have a dynamic dossier with different kind of publication, this we were not worried so much about the correspondence of the electronic format to the paper format. So the pages were not so important in this case, but in other cases, I agree.
That will vary by parliament and by circumstance. Yeah. Fabio.
From my point of view, the delivery format, the format in which you deliver the document to the final user, is strictly technological dependent. And so whatever is the fanciest format that is fashionable at the moment, then you should go for it. So you have to have in place a strong multi-format, multi-channel delivery architecture that allows you to create the document in the format du jour. In the specific case between EPUB and PDF, you have two situations that are on the opposite cases. On the one hand, the EPUB is typographically very poor. There's plenty of things that you can really do well. Tables are ugly, and the styles are limited, and so on. But the whole page adapts to the size of the screen, so you never scroll up and down, or you never have to focus or increase or decrease, and so on. On the other hand, the PDF doesn't fit the screen, but it keeps with the alignment of the page. So from my point of view, they have complementary advantages and disadvantages. The idea that your architecture and your documents depend on the specific advantages and disadvantages of the technologies that are fashionable in 2012 is scary to me.
I do need to close this off, and I want to thank you all very much. And just as an addendum to Fabio's final comment, I would point out that these devices that are sweeping the parliaments and sweeping out the paper have been with us for all of 2 years or something along those lines. So I hate to see what we're going to be saying next year at the conference. Oh, that's the one in the UK on video? I forgot. Thank you all very much. We will reconvene at 2:30 where we will, there's an announcement from our sponsor here.
Just a reminder that at 3 o'clock the doors will be closed, so if you go out, you won't come in after 3 o'clock. We will always be able to go out anyway, but just to come back in. So my suggestion, if you take lunch, probably is to take it here at the cafeteria, but just a suggestion.